Hey guys, what's up? Fantasy stories and fantasy movies are one of the coolest things in media and has been since, I don't know, the 60s or 70s. And yeah, if you go all the way back, you can get some really great fantasy movies, all the way from Tarzan to Conan to the Barbarian to, Buck Rogers or any of those, action hero fantasy characters that were either in space or in the past or in the future or in some kind of medieval like castle battling a dragon or a wizard or anything like that. You can go all the way back to where it started with fantasy books, and then in the 20th century fantasy movies, and they became huge. And it's interesting, people love them. They're fantasy movies. They're just in worlds and genres that are completely different to our world. There's fiction, which is cool, but it's always cool when they put some fantasy into the fiction, and I find that a lot of movies have that. It's total fiction. It's like happening in the modern day. It's a regular, people, and maybe they're going to school, or maybe as a family, or maybe they're friends, or whatever it is. And then there's the supernatural, and they're interacting with the supernatural. They're interacting with magic. They're interacting with monsters and beings and stuff like that. And so these movies get better and better. Yeah, there's a lot of bad sci-fi fantasy movies, but you know what? Like, even some of the bad ones are really good. They're just some of the bad ones are really good. Like, it's hard to say what's bad because even movies that are kind of like not perfect have some stuff in it that's amazing. So here are the definitive, what I think are some of the best fantasy movies, sci-fi fantasy movies of all time. And it's really my opinion, but I really do think these are really, really good movies, and they're worth watching. So the first one is, and I know you guessed it, Conan the Barbarian. This is an interesting DVD, actually. It's Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer in the same, like, one side is the Barbarian and the other side is the Destroyer. Obviously, the Destroyer was not like a great movie, but I don't think it was meant to be a great movie. The first one, John Milius doing Conan the Barbarian, they went all out to make this a great movie. The action scenes, the sword fighting, it was realistic. The characters, the location they shot it at, all of the special effects, the castles, all the places, all the things that they shot, all the costumes. It was a actual, like, I mean, Conan the Barbarian started with, it was a novel, and it was a bunch of stories, and it was novels and everything. And this was the first Conan the Barbarian movie that ever came out, and it was a hit. And I remember, like, at the time, we were all kind of thinking, like, oh, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger is a B actor, at the time, because he really wasn't he was nowhere. Like, he wasn't in any other movie. No one knew who he was. He was kind of like this bodybuilder kind of guy. And yeah, I mean, he fit the bill of what Conan's supposed to look like, but everyone thought it was going to be some bad movie, whatever it is, because there were a lot of bad movies back then that looked like Conan the Barbarian. And all of a sudden, still to this day, I'm surprised at how great this movie is. Thinking it was bad, thinking it was going to be bad, and then being completely surprised. I remember at the time I was like, wow, this is a good movie. And I thought I really like this. I still thought that, like, inherently this must be a bad movie, but I just like it. And then realized, like, years and years later, no, it was a great movie. It was actually one of the best movies of all time. And because it was fantasy, I'm putting it in the fantasy genre, into the fantasy list, the fantasy genre of being the best movie ever. It had everything in it. It had love story. It had revenge. It had, the guy's whole tribe, his whole clan, his whole family were slaughtered by Thulsa Doom, an evil wizard that turned into a snake. And he was a kid, and he was sold into slavery and became like a pit fighter for people gambling, to bet for him or against him that he was going to either win or die. And then finally let loose and, like, basically set free by his master, and then he was just on his own, with a sword. All he knew to do was use a sword. All he knew how to do was fight. And I think they taught him to read, and they taught him some stuff, but he just knew how to fight, and that's what it was. Like, his whole adventure started there. He knew how to fight, and then he met other people, they became thieves because they didn't have any money. You know, they were nobody, and they realized, you know, they could pretty much break into this cult, sort of like this tower, and steal this jewel. And they did, and they became rich, and they were like feasting and like partying, and they're passing out because they were drinking too much. And then the king says, rescue my daughter, I will give you treasures to make you all kings, you know. And they went and rescued their daughter, and people, it was just amazing. Like, you know, the woman dies, and she gives her life to save his. And it's just an amazing story. Revenge, just the music was amazing. I mean, like, it was well acted. I mean, like, he actually was, to give Arnold Schwarzenegger a lot of credit, that he was actually doing, like, taking acting lessons. He wasn't just, oh, I'm an actor. No, he was taking acting lessons. He was serious about it. You know, people were teaching him how to act, and he got together with John Milius and all these guys, the directors and all the writers and everything, and they put together this amazing movie. And I think everyone on that movie just wanted to take it seriously. They wanted to make a great movie. And the second one that came out, obviously it was, people were like, it's okay, you know, but honestly, come on, after the first one, you can't just do an okay movie after you did the first one was amazing. But nobody was around for the second one. John Milius didn't direct the second one. You know, it was just Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the other characters weren't even in it. The woman, she died in the first one. She couldn't be in the second one. The guy, the thief that was with him, what's his name? Whatever the guy's name was, he wasn't in it either. You know, there wasn't all of the whole cast of the original characters weren't there, and it could have been really cool if they had put the thief there and put the same characters back in, and somehow whoever survived the first movie and maybe, you know, did something. But I don't know. They didn't do anything to it, so it was what it was. And to this day, because of that second movie, the thing about it, people are like, oh, it's okay. That second movie put an end to Conan the Barbarian, the series, the franchise. You know, like, there would have been sequels and sequels and sequels. There would have been 5 or 6 sequels of this movie had the second movie been good. And it's not okay the second movie was bad, because it was so bad, there were no more movies after that. It put an end to all the Conan the Barbarian movies because the second one wasn't good. And like, well, the second one didn't work, so this is no longer going to make us money, so we're not doing it. So that movie was amazing. I'm going to give you another one, and I think this is one of the best movies of all time, especially if you're a kid. You don't have to be a kid, but this is really good, like, if you are a kid, because the main character is a kid, and that is Never Ending Story. Never Ending Story. And yeah, you know, I know the disc doesn't have any doesn't have a illustration on it. It's a disc, I don't care. The illustration's on the cover. Never Ending Story, the kid, Falcor, right? The luck dragon that he rides, all the little monsters and whatever. Like, I think the characters were done by Jim Henson, I think. I'm not really exactly sure, but it did a lot of other stuff. And some of the people that did the best, a lot of really good people were in it. The person that was involved in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the person that did Empire Strikes Back was in this one. This was just an amazing story. It is also a movie came out of nowhere that you thought was, you didn't know what to think of this movie, and it was just blows you away. Just blows you the frick away. It's just such a great movie, and it's so good. This thing, it's like, I don't collect movies. Like, I don't buy them, because how many times am I going to watch the same movie? A few, maybe, if I love the movie. But this one, this is just to keep and to watch and to put on the shelf, because I love this movie. It's so great. It's a kid. He's I think he was skipping school, or he was on his way to school, or whatever. He didn't go to school. He gets chased by bullies, and he runs away from them, and runs into some kind of a store or some kind of enclosure, like he's inside somewhere, and he finds this book, and he starts opening it and reading it, and it's the Never-Ending Story. And then they cinematize the book. Like, so as the kid is reading the book, the cinematics is happening, and he's in the story. Well, he's not in the story right away, but then, you know, he's basically reading about the heroes in the story, and the monsters and all the other characters and the creatures that are in the story and the world that they're in, and how the nothing is coming to destroy their world and stuff like that. And then later on, like after he's reading it and he gets really into it, he falls into the story. Like they call him into the story, and now he's inside this book, inside this amazing story. And it is a little bit of a symbol of that when you open a book, like your imagination opens, and you basically go into whatever, you become one with whatever story you're reading. If it's done well, if it's a good story, you feel like you're in that world and you're like seeing what's happening and you're like really in that world. You know, yes, at the time, this was the 80s, so this is before immersive video games, which is like now video games took over that torch where, you know, people are sort of like, they feel like they're in the world because you're actually interacting with the world. In the past, you didn't have that. Like, all you had to escape and go into some kind of fantasy world was movies and books. And so this movie was all about that. It was about a kid who just opened the book, started reading it, and kind of fell into this story, and the story that was fiction became real. And he was in this story, and he had to save the world that the book was about. And it's just an amazing story. The characters are great. The whole concept is just metaphysical. It's just really cool. It's the whole concept is just like, it makes you think, and it makes you like, what does that mean? You know, it's such a good fantasy story that, and especially if you're a kid watching this, I think it works better. I think anyone could watch this story and whatever. You know, you could kind of like, as you watch the story, you can remember how you were a kid and how you interacted with like fantasy stories when you were young or whatever it was, or what kind of worlds you imagined, you know, that you were in, whatever. You know, as a kid, you know, all that, it brings that all that up and stuff. But especially for for a kid, I think this movie is for kids, but it's also for adults who want to maybe connect with their own kid or whatever. It's for an adult who that wants to remember how things were when they were kids or whatever. It doesn't really have to be. The character in the story is a kid. And obviously, it works better if you're a kid because you can relate with the character. But honestly, the movie is just amazing, and it just came out in the 80s, and it just blew everyone away because of how good it was. And I think everyone that saw this movie thought how amazing this movie was. It was just a beautiful, great movie. And so comes the next one, and I will say, yes, Dune, the movie. Yes, this is a good movie. I love this tin. It's a metallic tin. And on the inside, it's got inserts. I don't know. It's got some inserts and whatever. It's got like a disc, a two-sided disc, where I think one side is it's the extended edition. So I watched the extended edition and where they kept the deleted scenes in this movie, and the deleted scenes, and it made the movie. The movie's already like 2.5 hours long or 2 hours long or something like that. But the deleted scenes, keeping all the scenes into it, made the movie like 3 hours long. And honestly, even though it explained a lot more about what the movie was about, it didn't. Let me see if I flip this open. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really work. It's pretty cool though. I like it when they do things like put a tin to it. The extended version, it wasn't really what was it about. This guy's a great actor. And then it was Sting. He was the other great actor in here, and everybody else was just really good. This is just a whole world. This is a world that was created. The movie. The extended version felt a little bit more boring because I felt like the movie, like 2 hours long, is a good, length of the movie. When they just like put more movie in there, just to explain the movie, explain what's going on, because it does take a lot of explaining to do when you watch this movie, because the book explained this whole world, and the movie is like trying to like explain this whole world in a 2-hour cinematic thing. So they did a 3-hour cinematic thing, and it just felt like it was dragging on and was too long. It's a beautiful movie. It's about 10,000 years in the future. The spice, there's this spice. You ingest it, you get addicted to it. You can't live without it, but it gives you, it allows space travel. Somehow, and it also it allows like people on the spice. They become like mega psychic. They can see into the future, and that's what it's pretty much about. This whole spice, there's genetic engineering. There's all this stuff in it, It's basically about the future and the future of the human race, and 10,000 years in the future, how there's these different planets and all this stuff that's going on. But that's what the book is about. The book is about the future and the whole structure, the political structure, and the different planets, and like how those planets are, and what the people are that live in these planets, and all the different, you know, races of people, and all the different like types of people, the Fremen and the Harkonnens and the Atreides, all these different like planetary like nations basically, and they have like these space forces, and there's wars, and there's all kinds of shit going on in the story, in the book. But the movie is not telling you the whole story of the book, because it can't. It's just too big of a story. Like maybe a series where they have like a bunch of seasons, and like one season is like 20 episodes or something like that, or like 10 episodes, or like whatever episodes they have, and it's like 20 hours long or 30 hours long, pretty much, if you watch the whole series. That would kind of explain a lot more about what's going on in the story. But the movie is just about the journey of Paul Atreides becoming Muad'Dib and the Kwisatz Haderach, which was basically a kid who was destined to become this very, very powerful messianic figure that's going to basically lead these Fremen that live on this desert planet to win this war and pretty much control basically the whole universe. Because whoever controls the spice controls the universe, because the spice was essential to everything. Everyone needed it, and it was essential to space travel and everything. I mean, whoever controlled the spice controlled the universe. And it's an interesting thing about it. It feels like sort of like a reflection of modern day and how the world is today, where certain things, like if you control them, you pretty much control the world. Like, oil production. If you control oil production, you control a lot. You have a lot of power. Because you basically say who gets oil and who doesn't. At this point, the way oil production is on Earth, on the planet, it's pretty free flowing. It's like everything is going and everything is right. But in the story, basically, Muad'Dib, he becomes Muad'Dib, he becomes this messianic figure, and he says he pretty much stops the production of spice, which puts everything in a standstill. Like, whoever can stop oil production can put everything in a standstill. That's why there are like these factions that go and destroy oil fields, because they feel like if they start burning oil fields, they'll control those oil refineries, and basically they'll power over oil, because oil runs everything, gasoline, machines, everything. Well, it's sort of like oil or water or anything that's vital to technology or survival. Whoever controls it and can stop it basically rules the universe, because they just have all this power, because they can say, no, you're not getting water, you're not getting gasoline, you're not getting oil, or you pay $10 a gallon if something like that. It's a space movie. It's an amazing movie. I think it's great. It's different than the book. The book is a long freaking read. The movie is short, but it's cinematic and it's beautiful. It's well done. It's got some very interesting scenes, really good, really things that are in there. There's a big takeaway from that movie where you feel like you learned something about something in that movie. You feel like you took something away just by the characters and what they think and how everything's written, and it's just very, very interesting. And I think it's a very, very interesting parallel of how things are today, and a speculation of how things will be in 10,000 years, and how they're still the same pretty much. The certain things are pretty much the same in 10,000 years with humans as they are now. Like wars and factions and nations, even though they were like planetary nations instead of like, geographical nations and whatever it is. But beautifully done. And I tried reading the second book. I couldn't get into it. I just couldn't. It was too political. It was too it was just political. There was no action. There was nothing else about it. It was just trying to explain itself all the time. And I'm like, okay, I want to. I want to enjoy it, but there's nothing happening in this book, so there's no action, there's nothing going on, so I can't read it. This next one is one of the best fantasy movies of all time. It came out probably before all these other ones, and it is Clash of the Titans, the first one. They made a second one, and the second one, not so good. I like the giant scorpions; those are pretty cool in the second one, but this one's amazing. The Medusa with the bow and arrow. Look at that Medusa. This was all done. All the monsters, creatures, all the effects were practical, and the special effects. These are all the monsters created by the special effects. It was done by Ray Harryhausen, who's a great. He was one of the best special effects people of all time. This movie is just amazing. It's based on Greek mythology. It's got Greek gods. It's got Greek heroes. It's got all kinds of heroes. It's got weapons. It's got magic swords, magic weapons. It's got quests. It's got Pegasuses and Medusa. Yeah. It's got a Titan that they have to destroy. It's got this cool owl that's mechanical and whatever. It's got all these different things. Man, this is the best classic freaking fantasy movie of of the early 80s. I remember this came out before all the other movies that I talked about, before Conan the Barbarian, before any of that stuff was this, and they put this on TV. I remember this being on TV. And they just put it on TV, and it was just it blew everything away because it was so amazing. The story is amazing. The characters, the whole quest, everything about it was just so cool, and it was great for the time. And still, the special effects are still good, to this day. Because right now we don't have this kind of special effects, and I don't know if we'll ever have it again, because it was stop motion animation, and they had these little dolls that moved around. And it took a long time to actually get scenes of that, because they had to take a shot, move the doll, take another shot, move the doll, so that the doll looks like it's moving around and fighting or running around or doing stuff or whatever it was. This is just amazing. It's based on actual Greek myth, but it's not it doesn't just talk about Greek myth. It's a modern day fantasy Greek mythological story. Just amazing. Amazing. Clash of the Titans. It's got everything. And this is it's got all the elements of a fantasy story in it. All the elements. It's just monsters, quests, magic weapons, heroes, people that are not heroes that become heroes. Just everything is just so cool. Everything was just so cool. Everything was just amazing with that one. So there's a couple more. I'm not going to say that these couple more are the best fantasy movies of all time, but I want to talk about these because I really like them. One of them is The Last Starfighter. Yeah, that's right. This is so cool. This kid, he lives in a trailer park. He wants to get out of the trailer park. He wants to go to college, make something of himself, get a great career, whatever it is. And he wants to leave this trailer park. And as he's in this trailer park, there's a video game machine, and this is from the 80s when there were arcade video game machines, and you put a quarter and you played a game. Cool. And so he's playing this video game machine, and he beats the machine, he beats the game, and doesn't think anything about it. And then the space alien comes down and says, well, the game that you're playing, it was a space fighter game where he's in a spaceship shooting down other spaceships. He did not know that the machine was a training machine, a training game for actual spaceships to fight other spaceships in a galactic war. He didn't know this. And, the space alien comes out and tells him, you know what, because you beat the machine, you're eligible to come to our space, federation or our space union, whatever they called it at the time in the movie, and fight against this other force that's trying to take over the galaxy. And they will take over Earth, and they will take over all these planets, and they will rule over, and they are evil, and you don't want them to rule over everything, And so he basically goes up, to their space station and gets into a fighter and kicks ass and destroys the other, the bad guys in this. It's just really amazing, really, really cool. You should watch that one. That one's great. And here's another one. This is also a little bit in the past. I like this movie so much. It's so good. I'm not going to say this is the best movie of all time, but you know what? A lot of people love this movie. It's just like a lot of people love The Last Starfighter. This is great. Logan's Run. It's in the future. People are living in this domed city. it's got this crazy thing, you know, you can only live to a certain age. The age changed depending on the book. The movie, the age was different than the book. And you were these clones and whatever it is, and you lived, everything was done for you, everything was like mechanized. You didn't have to do anything. It was leisure, and it was just like, you just pretty much, robots and machines did everything, and people just relaxed and didn't do anything. However, you know, you kind of like had this little crystal on your hand, that thing, and if it turns red, you've got to be pretty much carouselled, right? I think it was called carousel or something like that. And basically you were just destroyed. And people thought that you were renewed for renewal, or other people thought that you weren't actually being renewed, you were actually being killed, and they tried to escape and get away, and there were these sandmen that would run after them and try to let them not escape from, you know, to try to shoot them down before they escaped for whatever reason. Like, if they want to escape and there's nothing out there, so who cares? It's nothing out there. It's not like you need them, you know, there's other people. If you're trying to kill people, then let people escape. It's easy. It's the same thing. You don't have to kill them, let them escape. They'll escape, and so what? If there's nothing out there, there's nothing out there. But there was something out there. There was a whole world out there, and it was post-apocalypse, but everything was regrowing and everything was renewing. And basically, because they wanted to run away from this thing, they found the whole outside world and brought everyone, the whole society that was living in this bubble, this dome, into the outside world, and showed them there's an actual life and there's a world outside of their dome. Amazing, amazing story. Really, really good. You know, I'm not going to say this is the best movie of all time or anything like that, but I just want to mention it as, you know, talking about fantasy movies. It's a great one, you know. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments, any of these movies that you like, or what your favorite movies are. And like and subscribe. Hit the bell if you want to hit the bell, whatever that does or means or whatever. No one knows what that means, but they say it anyway. And I will see you guys in another video later.